All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to announce from back here because I'm back here. Yeah, you know, gotta watch the TV. Thank you, Brian, for coming out. Thanks everybody for coming on in. Sorry the fans are not as effective as they should be. We're going to have a couple more announcements of what's going on in October and November, and after the show. So, Brian, take it away.
All right. So, hello.
Hi.
Hey. My name is Brian Arnold. For those of you who don't know me, I actually haven't met a good chunk of this crowd, or if I have terrible memory, and I apologize. I am a staff software engineer at a company called Bizarre Voice. We power ratings and reviews on the internet. That sounds kind of snarky, but we are on roughly 97 of the top 100 retailers on the internet today. So we push a lot of traffic. We're in talks to set up for a petabyte of traffic in November because we need it. We broke 600 terabytes this month. So we do a lot. We serve a lot of content. If you've read a rating on a website that's not Amazon, it's probably us. I'm also a core committer to the Dojo toolkit, which is a JavaScript library. If I'm being honest, this is more a point of what I have done and not what I do a whole lot these days. And I also have about 1 million board games because, hey. And so,
you want to have a game night sometime?
I have many of them, well, not as many as I'd like, but yes, I'm very open to that. And I have about 6 games in my bag right now. But in the work that I do at Bizarre Voice, well, as you can imagine, you know, we're on a whole bunch of different websites out there, and we need some ability to easily test changes to our code without messing up other people's production environments. That's a huge thing for us. We don't want to mess up the internet. So we're going to talk about some of the things that I do. I do this literally every single day. I use this tool. And even if you're not doing third-party JavaScript sort of stuff, this may still become a tool that you go to every single day for a number of reasons. So what we're going to talk about is, first off, what a proxy even is. What do I mean when I say a proxy? I'll try and give a couple justifications as to why you probably should care about these things. And then what are all the different things you can actually do with that? So what is a proxy? I'm going to use an old talk trope, and let's use a definition. Well, on Wikipedia, it says that it's an agent or substitute authorized to act for another person, or a document with author. This isn't exactly what we mean, and I'm not going to do your debugging for you. This is not the talk, Debugging by Proxy. We're talking about, although I have done that for a few people in this room. Yes. What we're talking about is a proxy server, where this server, it can be either a full separate computer system or an application, which is what we're going to be talking about here this evening, that acts as this intermediary. The Wikipedia page actually has a decent little graphic. It's not the greatest thing, but it's much better than anything I probably would have drawn for you. So the idea is that this computer, Alice, can make a request to say, I want to know what the current time is from Bob, and this proxy actually handles the external communication and hands back the result. It's basically something you are actively inserting in between you and other services. So that means that you can basically watch the network flow. You can see all of the different requests that are happening, and with the right sorts of tools, with the right proxies, you can actually change what's happening and manipulate things in very interesting and powerful ways. So that's what we mean. I'm not going to say proxy server, but when I say proxy, that's what I mean. I mean a proxy server. Specifically, I'm talking about Charles Proxy, which if you view the slides later, I'll tweet a link. This is a link to the site. It's also just charlesproxy.com, I think. It's a software HTTP proxy that's built to help you debug web applications. That's its whole point. It's very powerful. There are some other tools. There's a tool called Fiddler, which was it's very similar in nature. There are a bunch of other ones. Having done this for some time, I still find Charles to be one of the most powerful. And it also works cross-operating system. It's a Java application, which normally would make me kind of cringe, but this actually works well everywhere. It actually lives up to the promise. So like that and Minecraft are it. So Charles is a great piece of software. It's $50 for a single license. If I didn't work for companies that had site licenses, I would buy my own today. You can use it for free. It's got a 30-minute nag mode where it'll then just shut down when you start it up again and sit for 10 seconds and move on. But Charles Proxy is the one that we're going to be discussing. Other proxies like Fiddler can do some of these things, but I'm going to be showing you how to do it within Charles. So now that we know what a proxy is, why do you actually care about this ability to kind of insert something in the middle? This gives you a whole bunch of knowledge and information about what's happening. You can go into DevTools in Chrome or in Firefox, and you can look at network flow and waterfall, but what if you need to debug IE6? I haven't had to do that for a while, and I hope you haven't either, but maybe that's reality, or IE8. There's not good network information there. This gives you good network information. If you want to see, you can actually use this for other personal things, like what are all the network connections going on my computer to anything HTTP? When I start the logging in Charles, you're going to see it's nuts. Like I'm going to see requests to Dropbox and I think maybe iCloud, and anything that's happening on the computer will start showing up in this log. This allows you to alter the requests and the responses, and that's really cool. That means that you can actively get in and kind of man in the middle yourself in order to test things out or to try things without maybe having to go through your full deployment process. If you want to test something, and I'm certain I'm not the only person who's ever had a bug that only manifests in production and not development, but I don't want to put the change into production that I think is going to fix it. This is actually a great way of messing with things. In fact, that's why Fiddler is called Fiddler. It allows you to fiddle with the network and actually change what's going on. So what are some of the things that this actually lets you do? This is where I'm going to start actually driving and kind of showing the app. There are a number of basics that this does that give you some simple power. This is nothing super fancy, but it's kind of cool. So the first thing I want to do, I'm going to show you Charles. Here it is. It's not the prettiest application, but it's a thing. So there's this little record button. And as soon as I start recording, any network requests that happen are going to start showing up in this log as a sequence of requests. So as an example, I have another browser window up here. This is my horribly ugly personal website. I'm a developer, not a designer. And now, look at all the information I've gotten just about that one refresh. Actually, this is going to Dropbox. This is probably coming from Dropbox, just running. But you can actually see this request went out. Here's the actual request details. Here's the response. Here's the headers for the response, as well as the actual just basic what it sent back. It sent back a 304 not modified because I have caching on, like a normal browser. So all of these requests, or almost all of them, are 304s not modified. Here's a 302 found, or it's interesting to be able to see all of these different things happening. Not everything goes through here. There are certain things that don't allow you to mess with, like here. This is Gmail stuff, so it's completely encrypted. You can do SSL stuff, but I intentionally don't have that on for my personal things because I don't want them showing up here. But as you can see, there's a whole lot of stuff just being captured. This is really interesting. What are all these gets to IP addresses? I don't know what that's coming from. I could dig to find that out. So this can actually almost be too much information, right? Well, I can just go ahead and start filtering and very easily kind of come down and type in what I'm looking for and see what it said. There's also structured view. This is really kind of cool. Instead of being the sequence of requests, it's basically directory style hierarchy for every single domain. Every single thing that's gone out. So like here is my website at random thing. Here is the style sheet and the JavaScript file and some of the images that came through. And I can interactively see what these requests are, and I can still get all the same information. I can see what the request was, what the response was, but it's a different way of looking at it. In fact, I can even actually choose to focus on just that domain. All the other stuff is here, it just kind of gets shoved into this other hosts folder. So just being able to see all of this stuff in and of itself is really kind of cool and powerful. It's more information than you can easily tease out of the network panel in DevTools. The recording does have to be on, otherwise things are still going through it, but it doesn't actually log anything. That makes sense. Now, as we noted, all of these requests went through and they're 304 not modified. And if I'm in Chrome, I can easily turn off DevTools turn off caching when I have DevTools open, right? I can open the DevTools, and here in, where is it? One of these tabs, I thought they actually added a, there it is. There's a checkbox under network to disable cache. And that'll hold here, but what if I'm running IE and you tell it to disable cache, but it doesn't care about you because it's IE? Charles actually has a tool for no caching. And when you enable no caching, you can actually do it on specific locations or for just all of the everything. And what this does is this does more than just ensure that 304 not modified is come out. Any E tags get stripped, any cache information gets stripped. Any and everything you could possibly ever do to try and make your content cache is known and understood by Charles and gets actively pulled out of the requests that are coming and going. So now, if I refresh this again, I'm going to hit trash to just kind of clear the log. I'll refresh again. Normally would have been a warmed cache hit, but now it's actually a cold hit. And if I look here in the overview, we can see that it's a 200 OK. If I look at the request, here's all the different headers that went out. Here are the cookies that went along with it, or just the full-on, this is the raw request data. Here are the headers from the response, the text that came through, a nice syntax highlighted HTML form of it, which is kind of cool. If you're looking at things like actually not that one, because that's a 302. Here we go. This is a minified JavaScript file, but it'll actually deminify it right here. I mean, you can do that. It doesn't deminify it in the browser. The browser has tools to do that in DevTools. But if you just wanted to look at it here, it's already kind of done for you, and that's kind of cool. So it's really nice to be able to turn off caching. And what's nice is that this applies to the whole computer everywhere. So I don't have to turn off caching in Firefox and then remember to turn it back on later. I don't have to turn it off for Safari. I just turn it off on the system, and then everything goes through Charles, and then I re-enable caching by turning off the no cache setting, and then I'm back to normal mode and everything is fine. So it's really a nice extra way of forcing the cache to be turned off. Another tool that I'm not going to necessarily dig into, because I actually kind of like my cookies and I don't want to lose them right now, you can actively block all cookies from being sent. This is one level above anything your browser can do for you, because this is just going to flat out strip them from all requests and any responses, and it's just completely neutered system-wide, no more cookies. So that could be nice. Typically, if I'm testing something and I want to not have cookies, I'll just open an incognito window, which doesn't have cookies by default, and I'll debug there.
When you block cookies and you unblock them, does it replace them, or are they gone forever?
It will do whatever is appropriate on the server end, so it's probably going to be new cookies. Okay. Usually they don't restore things, but depending on the site, like if you authenticate with the site, they'll probably put the same things back in the cookies. If you don't authenticate with the site, but it's just like fingerprinting you, it'll be an entirely new cookie.
Okay.
Right. You were talking about disabling cache. If you're doing something like in parallels, would you have to run Charles in parallels, or would it share that network?
I have something on that a little bit later, but the short version is you can configure browsers and virtual machines to use Charles Proxy as their native proxy server, and then that works from there. But that is an interesting point. The VMs don't actually pass through this at all. They get typically their own network connection, but you can do stuff to get around that. And DNS spoofing. So if you wanted to, say you're working with a client and they're like, well, our domain is going to be myawesomesite.com, but we don't actually have it registered yet, or we don't have DNS set up, and we've got a desk server that's at 13 dot whatever, and I don't want to have to deal with that. Or you know that you've set up a new server, but DNS hasn't refreshed. You could go in and edit the hosts file. How many people have edited their host file before? How many people forget entries in the host file and have to go back? Yeah. So
if I edit it, I know it.
So in Charles, there is a DNS spoofing, which is exactly what you would expect. I can come in and I can say that myawesomesite.com is actually just going to be off a localhost. And now this domain, I don't even know what it is, but I know that if I hit OK, and I come up here, actually I got to put the W on there, on port 8000, that's now loading my presentation because that's running on localhost on port 8000. So this is a really nice way to not have to worry about root level permissions, which can be a real pain sometimes when you're trying to modify a host file. If you can't, but you can run this, then you're golden. You just set up your stuff in here. And you can even import and export almost any setting on any of these screens. So that way you could have a whole slew of them that you only want active for certain times. And then once you've got them all the way you want, you just export them, and then you can come back in and remove them when you're done with them, and then import them again later. So it's a really nice way of just doing some quick, I need to change what DNS responses are for specific domains. And it supports wildcards and all sorts of other functional things. It's still just a basic tool, but it's a really kind of handy one. Mapping is this is my bread and butter. I live by the mapping tools every single day, and that's why I have them on their own separate thing. So, let's say I happen to be looking at some website here.
Some awesome website.
It's Drupal, so I don't really like it. But really,
It
that's
is.
interesting.
I tried to promote this event to my students and it said blocked.
So let's say for some weird reason something is buggy and I want to be able to see what's going on with jQuery. This jQuery is a minified version, right? Like this is the minified one. I want to be able to dig in and I want to be able to actually see what that code is, but I don't have access to this server. It's not my server. Maybe it's your client server. Maybe it's yours, but you don't want to be putting unminified code into production. But you want to be able to replace what's there with something else that you know that is the same code, just not this horrible line noise garbage. I'm going to make that a little bit bigger. What I can do is I can see in the comment here that this is version 1.10.2, which it just so happens jQuery actually puts on their website in complete unminified version. What I can do is I can now say, here's this file. I'm going to copy the link address. I'm now going to go into Charles and open the map remote. And with map remote, I'm now going to add a thing, and this is kind of nice. You have to put all these fields in separately, which is a big pain in the butt. They know this is a big pain in the butt, so if you just paste in a URL into host and hit tab, it just kind of goes into all the right spots. And then I'm going to say, you know what, this is the one I actually want. And so now, any requests that come in for webgeeks.org for jQuery are going to be halted. The proxy is going to grab the code.jquery.com version and return that as though it were the one requested.
It's cheating.
It is absolutely cheating, and it is wonderful.
If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
And now I will reload the page. And here it says jQuery min, and here's the URL. And hey, why did that not work? The loveliness of
To
live.
restart your browser.
Shouldn't have to. But I'm going to clear the log. I'm going to do that again. If maybe something got stuck in the cache. Here's the request. It mapped from remote URL. Did I put the URLs in the wrong order? That's frustrating. I don't tend to do map remotes. I do locals, but it's mapped from WebGeeks to there, and I see the request for code.jQuery.
WebGeeks applications.
So we're getting into the debugging a little early.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? You're right. That's a good catch. I hit the wrong URL. This one is now the full-on copy of jQuery. So you got to make sure you grab the right URL. Let's try this again. I will now copy the correct address. Thank you. But okay, that looks more. No. That one to this. There we go. Okay. The Google API's version of minified jQuery 1.10.2 to the code.jQuery CDN version. That will make a lot more sense this time. Hey, look, I'm still full of crap. Why is this not? That is really bizarre to me.
It's no longer cheating.
It is not, but I'm kind of...
Well, cheaters never win, so...
I think your mistake was trying to cheat WebGeeks.
Yeah. You know, I did this demo myself before doing this talk because I don't like to just fly on the seat of my pants, and it's totally not working, and this is very frustrating. I'm going to poke at it one more time. I am really not understanding why this is not working. Because I said map, because this is an HTTPS request. I can't do SSL unless I tell it that I want to do SSL. So I proxied a different file apparently earlier. But this is kind of a nice way for me to come in and show, look, now I'll just add ajax.googleapis.com. Now maybe? Yes, no, maybe so? No? Okay. Well, that's really frustrating. But we did see it happen here, where I accidentally did the wrong file. SSL proxying gets weird. No, okay. It may just not be letting me proxy that one. So I'm not going to worry about that one. The concept is there. And we saw that it worked even though I did it wrong. Here, I'll show you my, well no, this is not going to work because I can't proxy this. See, I would have expected this to actually, this is the URL
Do you need a site that doesn't use HTTPS?
Yeah, that might make it a little easier to go away.
Mine would work.
I'm really genuinely surprised though. I thought that
You can use mine if you want.
Alright, well actually, you know what? I think I did. Do I not? Oh, I upload jQuery on my site.
Yeah, you can use mine.
Alright, what is your site?
DeepDiveBuild.com. DeepDive, DYLAN.com. Isn't that ugly?
Alright, so here.
And I do have jQuery on there.
Okay, so here is your jQuery. Oh, and you're on 111.1. Let me copy this link address. We will get the map. We will come in here. I will now paste that one, but you're still using the HTTPS version.
Oh, really?
Yes. So,
because I just put the / in the script tag and let the browser decide.
So here's let me use this as an opportunity to show a different approach. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the HTML source code for the page, and I am actively going to save it to a temp directory on my system. And this is going to be how I map local. So I'm going to make webgeeks, and I'm going to call it just webgeeks. All right, so now I have this local one, and to show you that this actually does work, I'm going to go in and I'm going to put something in the header so that way it changes. And then I'm going to neuter that stupid S. So that way it is now the, where did it go? Oh, somehow I'm going to find this thing.
That S will not be, yeah.
All right, there. So now what I need to do though is I need to come into Charles, and I'm going to do a map local. This is very similar in nature, where I then just say, given a web address, map it to a local file on my system. So in my temp directory, I will go into, oh, not this temp, it's a different temp. I will go to webgeeks. I will pick my webgeeks HTML file, and when I reload this, hey look, it actually worked. You can see that the header changed. Tab. So what it's doing now is when the request is going out for just, let me clear the log and reload it again. When the request is going out for webgeeks.org, it's actively mapping it to a local file. It is taking the file on my system and returning that instead. Which is really kind of cool, right? Like I can take a file on my system, make changes to it, do what I want, and have it be what gets served up instead, replacing something else. This is how I do my job every day, where we build out our JavaScript for clients and we dump it into an S3 bucket and have them paste in a single JS file, and everything else starts happening from there. So if I want to test a fix, I author the fix, I do a local build, and I override the one that would be going from the S3 bucket to come from my local server instead, except I'm pulling it off of disk, just my local disk. That file takes over, and it's a completely different environment of code with all the fixes in place, and I can prove that it works without touching their production environment, which is incredibly useful and powerful. If I've ever helped you fix something in your code, this is how I did it. Where you're like, well, I wanted to do this thing, and I would copy that JavaScript file to my system, and then I would start making changes, and I would use map local so that my changes were taking over, and then once I was satisfied, I would be like, well, here's the file with the fixes, go. So in a way, that's debugging by proxy with the proxy. So now that that's working, I want to now find, I'm going to prove that this stupid request actually can be rewritten. Here we go. HTTP, it is not secure. Doing SSL proxying is still one of the biggest pains. And it may just be that it doesn't allow me to do that one. So this is from an HTTP to an HTTP. And actually that might be part of the problem, that I'm trying to proxy cross security. Who knows? Here is minified. Hey, look, it's the unminified version. It's like I have a little thing to read.
It's a celebration.
Yes. And so what's nice about that is now if I was encountering some problem, I could actually be working in the unminified code because I was able to do a remote mapping. But where that gets interesting is like, you know what, this isn't the current version of jQuery. The current version is, I think it's 11.1. And so what I could actually do is I could change my map to instead be the new version of jQuery. And now I can test it and see if things break in horrible, crazy ways. They don't appear to have, which is an awesome thing. This is actually a way that I have tested jQuery upgrades in production environments. Because you can see very clearly now it's 1.11.1. And nothing broke, so that's awesome. That means that, you know, I have to give Marky some credit. So that's cool. Mapping is far and away my favorite part of Charles. Being able to take a file that's on a server and then make a local copy and make modifications, or simply flat out override what somebody's doing with something else is incredibly powerful. You can theoretically use that for evil instead of good. Please don't be a jerk. But it's great for debugging and development.
Hey, Brian?
Yeah.
Do you do anything with your clients where you give them Charles and have them configure it to confirm fixes on their systems, or?
Not so much. In my specific case, we have a production S3 bucket for all our clients. We have a QA bucket, and we even have a third test bucket. So if it's working for me, I can push it to test, and then I can say replace your one URL with this URL, and then they can see it. So, but we have used Charles in the past, or Fiddler, to have people give us full dumps of the requests. When you have a full, like it's the everything, I'll show an example of that here in a minute. It's kind of amazing. People can basically give you exactly what the browser received file and everything, and then you can actually load that up and see it.
Wow. Is there a reason why you wouldn't use Wireshark to do the same thing? Is it just the decode, or?
Wireshark, it has a higher level of there's a much steeper learning curve, and this is kind of built to do that. I could do that's a really good point. Anything and everything here you could probably do with Wireshark or a dozen other tools. But this is very specifically a tool built for web developers and web designers to actually go in and make these changes without having to learn something like Wireshark, which is an awesome tool, but you know, that's the Swiss Army knife when all I really need is a butter knife. Or maybe a steak knife.
Now let's go from steak knife to batleth. Have you actually used, or could you think of a way to apply this proxy to attack yourself?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, we had a very interesting situation where a customer had managed to push information into reviews of theirs that included script elements as a cross-site scripting test. And when they were loading it on their page, it was working. The scripts were being executed. And we had a heart attack. So we're like, what the hell? Like red flags when people were freaking out. And it was still in the staging and a production testing. It wasn't live. And then after a day of people panicking, we're like, you know what? Why aren't we doing this? Let's see. And then we loaded it in isolation outside of their environment or with all their data. And then it was fine. Instead, it was doing HTML encoding, so you would actually see the script tag in the review. Like, you know, script alert, LOL, XSX hacks, whatever they'd written. And so it turned out they were doing something on their page that was bringing it to life, and we didn't know what. But they had chosen to do alerts. That was what they were injecting. So I actually used Charles to take their HTML, I made a local copy of it, and then in the head, the very first element was a script tag where I overrode alert to call debugger. Alert debugging in an effective way.
Plus one.
And as soon as that first alert hit from the cross-site scripting attack, I was actually able to see that they were executing one of the most ridiculous pieces of code I've ever seen, that the net result was basically taking anything that was in the page, pulling it out completely, running a regex over it, and reinserting the entire DOM. But the problem is that when you have something with HTML entities, and you read it from an inner HTML attribute, you don't get the ampersand LT semicolon. You get a less than sign. And so by doing that, it was revivifying the script tags. It was like cross-site by Lazarus. Like, it was just, it was just this ridiculous thing. And they had things that looked like it was trying to do the right thing, and it wasn't. And it was amazing. But absolutely, you could totally use this to say, here's an API request, and instead of the proper response, I'm going to send back a bunch of garbage and do like self-pin tests with it. Absolutely.
That was the geekiest thing I've ever understood.
That is really,
I also think cross-site by Lazarus is probably my favorite phrase recent
My
time.
new favorite band name.
So yeah, I actually sought permission to show some of these, but as you can imagine, clients don't like their stupidity exposed. So I can't show live examples of what we do, but the concept is there. And I did that through a local map. Local maps are ridiculously powerful.
I can see why.
Yeah.
I can see a lot.
So when you're debugging someone else's code that happens to be minified and you don't have a local copy of it, you take it down and you unminify it in your...
There's a tool called JS Beautifier
Okay.
that will actively kind of give you a deminified version locally, and then I'll start serving that, and that makes it a little easier to work with, and then I can kind of infer and figure out, oh, well, R is actually jQuery in this context, and you know, it's slower, but you can do it.
And is that a command line tool, or is that...
JS Beautifier, yeah.
Okay.
Or, I mean, there's other such tools online. Or I can load it once in Chrome and hit the pretty print. Do people know about pretty print?
No.
Okay, all right. Let me show that, because I'm gonna turn off actually I'm gonna turn off the local map. But I'm gonna turn off the remote one so that way we can see. So back to here. I'm gonna reload, and here is the minified jQuery. It really is the minified jQuery. Well, when you're in DevTools, if I come to the Sources tab and I hit Command-O or Control-O, it gives me a file picker that's fuzzy file style. So like I can type jqmin, and it'll start to filter down. I can pick a file and I can actually see it there. But down here in the lower right, or sorry, left, hello, lower left, there's this little curly braces that says pretty print, right? One click, boom. It completely reformats the code. I can even set breakpoints on that formatted code, and it will respect them. And so I could just take this, and then I could copy that instead and work with that. This is also very powerful and well worth your time and knowledge. Being able to just deminify. Now you'll notice variable names are still a bunch of noise and garbage, right? Like it's not making it actually come back to life. It's just reformatting. But it's really nice reformatting. It's a lot easier to read and flip through the approximate, how many lines is this?
Will this format your code? Like if you give it a horrible formatted code?
Well, in theory, yes, it will. It'll clean up the formatting based on some level rule, and then you can copy it out and paste it on over. That's a big job for you.
I happen to do that when I'm like just trying to like clear my mind from like the gook, but like
I
this
have
is
way
also
too.
helpful.
I have way too big of a stick up my ass to get into that situation, so my code is clean. It doesn't matter how messy.
Standards.
In my text editor, if I have trailing white space on a line, it's bright red because screw trailing white space. Like it's.
Oh, definitely.
But there are other tools I have that help me do some of that stuff. So yeah, Pretty Print is awesome. Charles has its own form. The one thing I haven't found a way to do with Charles that you just may not be able to do is some sort of a way to do like a run the code through a process before shipping it out. You know, like I can't say, well, get the request and then run a batch script on it, or run something and then serve that. That I haven't found a way to do. Generally, I don't need to do that, but that's the thing. I will also note, very important, if you're working with, say, PHP, and you've got a request to foo.php, and you want to do a map, if you do a map local, it will serve the source. It does not execute your PHP. So make sure you do a map remote to a local server running that is that URL, and then you get the actual executed version. And that's true of any server-side executed thing. When you map local, it just says, oh, here's some content, and it serves it back. So it doesn't really do anything fancy or special for you. There are times when you may wish to simulate as though you are operating on a Nokia device in the middle of China on a connection that makes a 14.4 dial-up modem look good. You can mimic that with Charles.
I thought that was just
Well, there's that too. But, so one of the things I can do is I can throttle. And I'm not going to necessarily actually turn on throttling because I don't want to bring my computer to its knees right now, because this will. You can specify domains. You'll notice I'm currently filtering down only R content at Bizarre Voice, just because that's the only one I typically want to mess with. But there's all of these different presets. I can pick different modems. I can pick 3G. And you can actually determine download and upload rates. And it's really kind of cool to be able to just ratchet this down and say, I'm on a bad network now, how does this respond? Additionally, you may want to just flat out block somebody from being able to access a resource. Maybe you want to act like a server went down, but you don't want to throttle it, you just want to flat out kill it. There is a blacklisting tool. And I can enable the blacklist, and I'm going to go back to my site. This image offends me. It is awful. I put it together years ago. I don't know why I still leave it up here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just flat out blacklist that file. Now what will happen is I will load this. I will open my DevTools. I'll reload it. And you'll notice this network request actually, it killed the image. Just flat out. Image didn't come through. There's even a network error here. And that network error, I have to have the network tab open when I do that. Where is it? Actually, it's not even showing up in network. It's being killed so fast, it's not coming through the network. So in a way, this is almost too aggressive, because this is just flat out like, it's not here. That's really nice sometimes. Where I've used this is I'm working on a client's website and they're loading 20 JavaScript files and something's happening bad somewhere and I can't readily find it. I'll start blacklisting scripts from the page one by one until suddenly things are fine, and then I know the last one I blacklisted is the bad one. So it's kind of a nice way to be selective and kill things. But let's say I wanted something a little more realistic. A flat out blacklist, that's not that realistic. There is an incredibly powerful tool called Rewrite. Rewrite basically allows me to come in. Let me turn off a bunch of these things. Like I'm going to turn off no caching. I'm going to turn off my map. I'm going to turn off that. Turn off the blacklist. I'm going to turn off spoofing. And now I'm going to go into Rewrite.
By the way,
Sorry.
blacklisting, is it wildcardable?
Yes. You can just do start up whatever, and it just all goes away.
Start at star.
You could star. If you just want to see what happens when the network dies, you can hit star, or you can just turn off Wi-Fi on your computer and it's the same effect. So what I've done is I've created a new set of rules. And what's interesting with these sets of rules, this is a little bit more of an advanced screen. You just give it a name, and you can say, given this location, I want to apply these rules. So what I'm doing is I'm now going to say that the response status is now going to be HTTP 418, which is I'm a teapot. I'm not joking.
True?
Yes,
it's true.
It was an April Fool's joke, but it is actually spec.
I'm so glad I know that.
And I'm going to say that the body response is going to say 418, I'm a little teapot. And so now what will happen is I'm doing this on my top level domain. So now if I refresh the page, I'm a little teapot. And that's really kind of cool. But if I want to be maybe a little more realistic, I will disable this one, but I'll take that. Actually, let me just apply that and get the page back. Copy the URL again. I'm going to add this location, and then I'll have that image be 418 on a little teapot. And so now you can actually see 418 on a teapot, and it actually shows. Why is it not? Oh, because I'm filtering. That is why. Here we go. 418 on a teapot. It's an error. What's funny is it actually did send the rest of the image back. I didn't change that, but because it got the HTTP status code, it shows up as an error.
Because a 400 is an error. 4x is an error.
Right. And I would actually probably just say, I'll just replace the response with nothing, and let's just make it more. Maybe I'll just try and make it more 404, and we'll see.
I like it.
All right, so apparently it's still sending the whole image through. Oh, wait, no, it's not. Why is it saying there's no response data?
Yeah, it's in the header.
Oh, okay.
It's in the header, see? It says full
Yeah, so I mean, it is making the change, but I feel like I'm actually seeing the file come through. I have logging enabled right now, so I can actively come through and just say, here's the request, here's the 404. It is still sending the response through. So I may need to do something in the rewrite that says, but you can do all sorts of changes. You can add headers, you can modify them, you can remove them, you can actually change hosts, paths, full URLs, mess around with query strings, a ton of stuff. Where this saved me a bunch of time at one point was we did a big system infrastructure change from Grunt 0.3 to Grunt 0.4, and a part of that change was we updated one of our processes that puts files on S3. Well, it was putting the files on S3 before with the appropriate content type header that included a character set. And without an explicit character set, the assumed character set is ISO 8859-1, but all of our files were UTF-8. And so what was happening was all of our testing was completely fine because I bet everybody in this room is probably very ethnocentric. You don't test your Japanese clients probably. Well, we didn't. And it turns out that multi-byte strings that are interpreted in the wrong character set do incredibly bizarre and weird things. We were trying to split on a string on an underscore that was going away because of character encoding. More commonly, people will see like little weird A's or boxes come back in their responses.
Oh, yeah.
So what I was able to do is I was actually able to modify the header to say when the content type was coming back on these files, append the appropriate character set just to see if that fixed it. And it did. So within 5 minutes, I was able to say, to move from I have a hypothesis and I can verify it without actually messing with production very rapidly. Actually making the changes that put the character set in place, well, that was a whole other issue. But I was able to actively identify what was going on. So this also is worth pointing out, this can be done on both sides, the request and the response. So you can say, you know what, I want all requests for this particular URL to always have this particular query string parameter added. Maybe you need to put a token in place, or maybe you need to modify the token to be a different token, and you can't change that for one reason or another. Basically, anything that's going through, you can start modifying in some way. Mapping local is a great way of changing the direct content of the file. Rewrite is a great way of changing all the other things about the request and the response. So rewrite is pretty freaking awesome, and it's very difficult to get right. So you want to make little changes first, and then kind of iterate and build up. And like everything else, you can do imports and exports, which is pretty nice.
Ryan, you often combine them, rewrite rules with remap rules.
You can start putting them together, and you can do some pretty cool stuff. Another really interesting thing is this whole concept of a breakpoint. How many people have used breakpoints in their code, in their software development? Most people. So that's just basically when a certain line is hit, I want to stop things. You can do that with network requests. So here, I'm saying when my website is requested, I want to break before the response actually goes through. So now I will refresh. Charles has come up because we hit a breakpoint. And so here is what the request was. Here's kind of an overview of it. Here's the actual response. So here's the headers. So maybe I'll say X, whatever I do. And I'll go into the HTML and I'll just put some sort of noise into the title, and maybe I'll even come in here and I know how to write HTML, I swear. And now I will hit execute, and you'll notice the browser's still spinning away. It just thinks the server's taking a long time. But woo, and it's there. And so I was actively able to go in and completely miss. Look, here's even in the response headers, here's my X whatever header. But you can basically get in the way and do like one-off changes and poke at things. So maybe you want to do something in rewrite, but you're having trouble getting the rule right. Well, just set a breakpoint, just make your change as a one-off, and if it works, great, you can move on. To be honest, in practice, I don't use breakpoints that often because it's actively stopping the browser from doing anything, and I can probably find a better way to implement something. But if I just want to do a quick one-off, just to try something, breakpoints are phenomenal. Oh, and gists. I wanted to show this. If you have a whole set of requests that have come through, anything that's in here, like here's my structure, here are all the different requests that have gone through, I could pick any one of these and right-click, and there is, where is it? Publish gist. How many people know what a gist is? Not too many. How many people know what GitHub is or have an account with GitHub? Okay, pretty much everybody. So GitHub is a nice version repository or version control system. What Git is, GitHub's a place to host it. GitHub has this system called gists, gist.github.com. It's a great way of just saying, you know what, I need to put a couple files up. Just here you go, here's some stuff. Kind of scratch space, and people can comment on gists, and you can iterate on them. They're actually Git repositories in their own right, but they don't come with the full ability that GitHub proper repositories do. So it's kind of a scratch space, just to get the gist of a point across. Well, I can then take this content and I can publish it to a gist. And so this is one that I did last night where I was loading from a warm cache, and I just wanted to see what all the network requests were when I did one load of my domain. And so you can see, here was the first request, and it was for randomthink.net, and here's all the headers, and here's the response that came back. Here was the second request and response. It's actually full requests and responses, file by file, one at a time. And I could now give any of you this URL, and you could have all of this. Keeping in mind, I would be giving you my cookies if I did this. This is a thing that you can very easily accidentally expose yourself. So if you're going to publish a gist, open a private instance and don't log into anything, and clear all of your recordings. You can come in here and hit the little trash can, and boop, everything goes away. Make sure you're clean before you publish a gist. And just to show you what happens if I'm on a cold cache, this is what it ships out. The full content of the everything, including even images, but with the header in the front. Like, it is literally all of the content of the entire whatever that you're choosing to publish to a gist. So typically you're not going to just pick a domain and publish gist, because that would be a whole pile of shit. Like, it is tons of stuff. But if you're trying to show a few network requests, it's really powerful and really awesome. Additionally, I will say, you can also, if you know somebody else is using Charles, you can hit save to save the current session that was recorded, and it creates an entire full snapshot of all the activity that somebody else can then receive and load up and look through. So
if you want Brian Arnold to do your debugging?
I started saying no, I am not the pro. No. I'm happy to help people with their JavaScript and stuff. But, so that's just really kind of crazy, cool, and powerful. A whole bunch of crap that you can just completely push up online. And I can't really demo this one easily here, but this goes to, I think this was your question earlier, is other devices. So when Charles is running, it is running as a local server application on your computer, and it's exposed on port 8888. So that means that I can take my iPad, or I can take my Android phone, or I can take my iPhone, or I can take my whatever, and I can actually configure these devices to be on my Charles proxy.
What?
I can go in, every single different device has some way of setting what its proxy is for the browser. You just change the browser's proxy settings and voila. This is also how I do VM-based debugging. If you're not familiar with it, there's a website called modern.ie, which in and of itself is kind of an oxymoron, but it's also a valid domain. And this is actually a place that you can download full virtual machines for any version of IE from 6 through 11. Full-on VMs for VirtualBox, for VMware, for Parallels. You can download and run these, but these don't go through your proxy. What you actually have to do is when you start one up, you have to then go into the settings for the browser, but you can very easily just say, I'm going to use Charles Proxy. There's a little simple spot you go into, and then now the browser's request will go to your Charles Proxy and out. And what's nice about doing that for these devices too is I don't have to tether, they're just on the network. Yeah, and they're not active, that's okay, they still work. And you can install Firefox and other things on them too. You don't want to install a game because they automatically shut down after an hour. But here I can come into LAN settings and I can just say, you know what? This in the VM 10.0.2.2 is my machine. So I can just do that and boom, now this thing is configured to work through Charles Proxy. And actually to show that, just because I'm here and it's fast enough, I will turn it off. And I will go to myawesomesite.com, which I really pray doesn't have any tags on it. All right, some random, oh, nope. All right, so who knows what that is? But earlier I had done the Charles DNS spoofing. myawesomesite.com, and just make it go localhost. And then I'll come in here and I'll put the port back on, and nothing's going to happen because I didn't actually go in and turn on the proxy. That actually was intentional. I just want to show nothing was happening. I'll do that. I'll stop this. And now if I reload, oh, that's interesting. Charles is saying he can't connect.
Did you just smack?
There it goes. Hey, look, it's my presentation in a horrible, ugly fashion because it's IE8. But it's really cool to be able to see I'm actively able to completely take over virtual environments as well with this tool.
So is that a SOX proxy or HTTP or what is it?
In this case, it's just a simple HTTP proxy. You can configure it as a full SOX proxy. You can actually configure Charles Proxy to use other proxies if you need to, SOX or otherwise. And it's got all of that. They actually have really detailed help, but it's just a straight HTTP proxy. It's nothing fancy. To do the SSL stuff, you have to accept a certificate signing authority from Charles on your computer, which is a little scary, but it's not terrible. And then what it does is it actually it unencodes and then ships a new SSL certificate it generates on the fly for the other side and re-encodes. Like it's, when it works. as seen earlier, it's not always the most reliable thing. And then even more, which I'm not even going to try and cover all of these because there's just so much. But you can do things like automatically validate files with W3C that come through just because I want to see that. I want to mirror full sites. I can just say, you know what, any requests for my host or some other host, just dump all the actual content into this directory. So automatically save. You can do these auto-saving the recording. You can have it automatically save them out to disk at set intervals. So like every 15 minutes I want to dump a recording session to disk because if you leave this running after like 3 hours, it's going to eat your RAM because it's keeping everything in memory when you're recording, so it'll start complaining. You can do reverse proxies, you can do port forwarding, which is kind of weird, where any request coming in here gets forwarded off to somewhere else. It's ridiculously powerful. So that's pretty much what I want to say about Charles. I hope that this was of some value and use to people. Thanks. I know that I'm kind of like on time. We had some questions. I don't know what people want to do. Or
Now that we have a fan turned on, we can pretty much take our time. There's no longer the sauna in here.
maybe it's that is. Any questions I'm happy to show or look at or
feature for seconds.
I mean, it seems more interesting than I think it really is. Basically, you just say, when I have on this protocol, from this port to this port, forward to this remote host and this remote port. And it's not, it's almost like what you would do in your router, but just kind of local temporary. Yeah, I haven't done a whole lot with it because I usually don't need it, but it is interesting to be able to forward local ports off to remote servers because maybe I can't access a remote port for some reason, or I need to just make the request look like it's coming from a different port. And that's a way to do that.
Brian, how might you leverage this for server-side code, for PHP files? This is really for Java.
Well, it's for any content that you want to override. So like, I have used this for PHP, but generally the context for that is I have a production server that's running an application. I then have a local version of that entire server running, and I want to say when the request for foo.php goes out, map it remotely and map it to my local server foo.php, and then my local server's version of the file will be executed and ran and generated and returned. So technically the service is still running locally, so it's not the most useful thing.
But if you had two environments, both remote, how would you use remote mapping to...
Yes, and there's where it can be quite useful.
And then actually, I was thinking of doing an Xdebug for PHP, Martin. I was thinking about doing an Xdebug presentation, which is basically the exact same, which is using that, but I use PHP Storm, and if I ever have a problem, I can have a remote server call my local instance and stop it and wait for it and make any changes I need to on that.
I've heard of Xdebug.
So that's going to be coming up.
That sounds great.
There are some proxy tools that have some loading or load testing features. I'm not sure if Charles has some option
does,
on that.
actually. It has, where is that? I know that I just recently saw this in here. Maybe it was, why am I not seeing this now? Oh, there was, so not rewrite. I know that it exists. I feel like I've seen it in here. I'm not remembering where it's at. But basically it was like, oh, here it is. It's an advanced repeat where you can say, here's a request. And then, so like here, I will pick, maybe I'll just see if I can find. Go back here. Oh, I have a breakpoint. That's right. So here, so I can do repeat advanced, and then I can say I want to make this request 100 times, 10 at a time.
Oh, nice.
Boom. Now, of course, that is just a request for that one file. It's not all the resources that that file would generate. But it was flat out, just kind of slamming on the server. And I mean,
testing an API though.
yeah, testing an API, that'd be phenomenal. And I mean, 100 requests over 10 concurrent is crap. That's nothing. But you could crank that up and see what it does.
Yeah, sure.
And it opens it as a completely new session, which was kind of cool. So yeah, that was in the repeat advanced functionality.
Okay, thanks.
So you work on multiple servers. On your website, it's on multiple servers. Can you
Target one.
Yeah.
That's really going to be dependent on how your network architecture is set up. So as a real example, when you go to api.starvoice.com, it goes to a service we use called Mashery, and then Mashery figures out based on a couple of query string parameters what actual server to go to. But internally, I know that I can go to c7-origin.something.starvoice.com and hit the same API. So I would use a rewrite to say when requests come in for API.whatever, just send them to origin.
But it doesn't
So I'm
allow you
targeting
to
one server.
target a particular
as long as you could put it into a browser. If you could figure out a URL for it and put it in somewhere, you can do that. If it's hidden behind varnish or some sort of round robin or something, and there's not publicly addressable addresses for it, or internally addressable, then you're hosed. You can't do it.
What's the chart tab? I saw it a couple times.
It just gives you some detail about the network waterfall. It's more interesting if I'm in like in a structure here and I've got this. Here's actually the chart of the request and flow. Like this is the network waterfall that you would see in Chrome.
It's kind of like, yeah, you see it in the Chrome right behind there.
Yeah, it's basically the same, except it's one level removed because it's actually on the network. That being said, Chrome has more detail in a way because this doesn't give you detail about how long it actually took to parse or execute it. It's just how long it took until the browser got it.
So could you use this, if your client had a single page app, could you run the unminified version on your machine locally and then point the minified version?
I do that. I do that all the time.
Yeah.
What we have is I can run a local instance of our application that will serve out all of the unminified files, and we use AMD and like 200 modules. And so I can then take the URL that would start that process and I can map remote, and now I'm loading the unminified, unbuilt everything against the client's deploy and doing that. We've also did that. I used to work at another company called SitePin, and with Dojo, their Dojo was all in one directory, so I would just say, well, any requests for that directory map to this directory. It's not just one-by-one files. You can do foo/star maps to this directory, and then all of the files, all of the requests get figured out, and it does the right thing and serves those instead.
So that being said, can you do that the opposite way? Say I'm working on a site locally, and I don't want to download all the resource folders of all their images that they've uploaded. Can you map localhost to the third party so that it get any image in the sites directory, grabs the image remotely?
I can't see why not. Yeah,
That's,
I mean it's just a request, one request to another place. So localhost to whatever localhost, it seems like it would work just fine. That's actually kind of a cool thing. Another thing you could do is you could turn on mirroring and just load it once, and then point to those if you didn't want to keep, or if you didn't want that to always be going out to them.
How easy is the filtering? Because in WebShark, it's pretty cumbersome. I'm just wondering.
Like if I just want to look at a certain subset of requests,
Yeah.
I just start typing the string in here. Like,
So it just tries to match characters.
yeah. And I can hit setting, and I can even use regular expression if I want. So in general, though, I usually know exactly what I'm looking for. Like I'm looking for screen.css. I know a file name. But I can turn on regex. I just have never needed that. This has been enough. And I'll usually come in and I'll clear the session, and then I'll make my request. So that way it's relatively clean. And you can turn on and off recording, on and off throttling, and on and off breakpoints all right there. And we have different sessions. Like this was the second session that was opened up for the advanced repeat of trying to kind of slam my server. I'm actually kind of glad it was okay. It's just serving static resources, but you never know. And then I can close that with Command W, just like it were a window, and get back to my one session.
So this is just like a graphical application, no server client interface. If you're running it, you're going to have the full Java UI.
In theory, there is a way to turn on a web client for this, and so you can have this running somewhere else.
Yeah.
But in practice, you don't want to do that. This gives you the full control and power. And so, yeah, it kind of sucks to be running a full app. And it also kind of sucks that it takes over your whole machine. So if you're wanting to test throttling, and you just want to test it everywhere, you are actively bringing your entire machine down to that speed.
Well, and basically all of my servers that I work on are headless, so I wouldn't be able to do much of this.
Yeah, it's not something. I use it on the client side where I know I've got a browser up, and I run it there. And I couldn't do my job without this tool. I could probably find some horrible way. This makes me not.
You could do it more.
I do. It's absolutely right. I don't need this tool. but that's like saying, well, you know, I don't really need a browser because I can just, you know, curl the request. I know enough about JavaScript. I know how to do it. So
Who needs curl when you have Telnet as a browser?
yeah, there you go. I'll just tell them to port 80 and I'll just go, yeah. So no, this is a wonderful tool that makes my life happy. And the ability to just flat out, like I can save a session and just it saves all the everything. And when I load them, I can load up Charles sessions or dumps from Fiddler or HARS. So for example, if you're not, if you haven't messed with it before, when you're in Chrome and you see your network panel here, if you wanted to share this detail with somebody, you can actually save it as a HAR file with the content. And this actually creates a special file that's all the everything